Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're gonna, for the sake of time, we're gonna continue on, even though we don't have everyone back from lunch. But for the sake of time and to respect those of you who are here back on time, let's push forward. As one of my favorite colleagues from Atlanta likes to say when we're doing all-day trainings, let's keep it on push and continue to round out the day, and we will end on a positive note. So, just to recap this morning, so that we can start to frame our mind in terms of where we're going this afternoon, Zoe gave us the context of where we're going today, of what we were doing. And she started by reviewing what happened at our last forum, what happened yesterday, and then just kind of giving insights as to our direction. And laid out some of our givens that are what is creating an MMDR Data Institute, the who being all of us, Navajo Nation community members, Navajo Nation programs, Navajo Nation leadership, and also our non-Native partners, even our non-Navajo partners. So all of us have our hand in this MMDR Institute, and we have a responsibility to ensure that we are collecting as much data as possible. The where is Navajo Nation proper, the reservation, but also including our border towns, our urban areas, because we know as Navajo people, we are migratory, we go back and forth. A lot of us live off reservation, so we want to make sure that we're inclusive of those individuals. And for this first segment of what we're trying to do with this action planning session, we have a target date of October of this year, so in 2 months' time. So this is just the first piece of developing the broader Data Institute. So we're just taking it, we're piecemealing it, so it's invitable, achievable chunks, so that way we can see success. We can achieve those little success steps, those milestones, so that we're not thinking that, oh, we're trying to create the huge thing and we're not getting anywhere. We want to see success and see us moving in the right direction. And so from that, we took a little visioning, brainstorming activity of looking at what does success look like after we have created this MMDR Data Institute. And so all of you really brainstorm, what does that look like? What does success look like? So we really envisioned the future and what we wanted to achieve and what the environment, the landscape would look like. After that, we took a step back and we said, okay, now that we know our goal, our vision, and our dream, what do we have to work with? What's our current reality? We looked at what are our strengths and weaknesses of the group, of those of us sitting here in the room, the audience online as well, seeing off on me. No. It's green. We had a lot of battery on this. Okay, there we go. Okay, so looking at our strengths and weaknesses internally, and then also externally. Once we achieve this Data Institute, what are some benefits of having the Data Institute? And also, what are some dangers that if we achieve this, what are some things that are posing some threats or dangers? And so we were able to brainstorm and look at what do we have to work with both internally and externally. And then right before we broke for lunch, we really started to look at what can we as a collective start to do to commit to as far as this Data Institute and moving it forward. And spent a great deal of time brainstorming activities and ideas, and then we came up with this very in-depth and comprehensive statement that is very robust and very good, and so I'll read that again for those of you just to refresh your memory. So we are committed to a vision of a healthy nation and communities where all our people enjoy life and prosper. We affirm our Diné principles of K'e so that we may continue to journey on Sa'an Nagai B'K'e Hojo. We find it intolerable that Diné experiencing missing and murdered relatives, and that our families and relatives cannot heal or revitalize until all of our people are safe and protected. We are committed to actively declaring support to Council Delegate Amber Crotty and all constituents who are dedicated to justice for our missing and murdered relatives. We call for the Navajo Nation, our leaders, and the United States, who has declared responsibility to its indigenous nations and peoples, to support and affirm this initiative and to seek redress for the inconsolable grief of our people. So that's the commitment statement that we all came up with here this morning. So now, moving forward, what we want to do is start to brainstorm steps, action items to accomplish. So to answer this question, what steps and action items do we need to accomplish to apply for? We initially had the discretionary funds, but it's actually administration for Native American funds, so ANA funds, to begin creating the MMDR Data Institute by October 2019, so within a 2 months time period. So this is what we're focusing on. We're not focusing on the entire Data Institute. We're wanting to see what action steps do we need to take to put into place to apply for this funding by October 2019, which will help give us a base funding for moving forward. Okay, does everyone understand that we're answering that question? So individually, take out a sheet of paper and a pen. Oh, you can pass those out. So we're going to pass out sheets of paper if you don't have one, but write down, come up with 10 action items individually. Just brainstorm with yourself 10 action items to accomplish that question. Yes?
Can I ask what the funding process looks like?
Jolene, do you know what the funding process looks like for ANA? Okay. We don't know that, unfortunately. I know it's an online application process, and it's a one-pager. So I think it's just really looking at an overview of what is needed and what is the funding going to be used for, who are your key partners, and just a really, like the sheet that we gave out yesterday, the MMDR overview, basically something like that looking at what is the project that we're trying to entail, who are your partners, and what is your time frame. So it's really basic funding that we're looking for, and it's just to get that jump start for us to begin to have a base that we can operate from to begin creating this MMDR Institute. So the question is, again, here, what steps and action items do we need to accomplish to apply for ANA funds to begin creating an MMDR Institute by October of this year? So the application process is in October. So what are the action steps that we need to put into place so that we can begin to apply for this funding? Administration of Native Americans. Administration for Native Americans. So again, application process is due in October. So from now until then, what action items do we need to put into place to prepare us for that? No, it's a nonprofit, national nonprofit. So it's not tribal funds, but Delegate Crowd is wanting to apply for this funding to give us baseline funding to help us move forward to create this Data Institute. Yes?
As I reflected on this over lunch, one of the things that is when you look at all the directions that we generated over there on the right, is that we have moved in a much bigger direction than just Data Institute, okay? Because I think if you were to apply for funding and you called it a Data Institute and then bring up a lot more of the concepts related to victim advocacy and those kinds of things, the title of what you're funding and then what you say is not going to match. So I don't know.
Right. So again, this is just initial seed funding, the first step. It's not to fund the entire project. It's just that first step to begin to continue to have like these types of discussions and dialogues to begin to collect all of that information to then move forward with the process. So it's just the initial seed funding. It's not the overall funding for the entire project. It's just the initial to get us that jump start. So it's piecemealing the funding process so that we're not trying to tackle the big beast, but we're trying to make those small, achievable steps.
Could you perceive it as specifically related to data or a lot of the things that we've been talking about?
It's for this project, and right now the project is called the MMDR Data Institute. So knowing that MMDR has all these cofactors that lead into it, like domestic violence, like sexual assault, like trafficking and sex exploitation, we know all of that kind of lead into and put an individual at risk for going missing and murdered. And so knowing that MMDR is a large umbrella that we're operating under, So let's not get caught up in those little specifics that lead into that. We're just trying to get this seed funding to begin to move forward so that we can begin to have those discussions at that point. Does that make sense for everyone? Okay.
I thought when you go for funding for any proposal, you have to have a need. And that need is based on the data that you put into your proposal, which funds the rest of your programs.
Right. So the question, the comment was having a need, a specified need in order to apply for funding, and in order to accomplish and identify that need, you need data to support that. However, what we're trying to do is collect the data that we can say that there is a need. We don't have the quantitative hard data right now, so what we're doing is doing qualitative analysis in terms of collecting the stories from victims, but also and families, but also stories from each one of you who work in this movement, in this field, and who have corresponded and treated individuals who have been victims of domestic violence, of sexual assault, and trafficking. So does that make sense? Does that clarify that question? That we're trying to, the whole purpose of the MMDR Institute is so that we can start to generate the quantifiable data, the numbers, the hard numbers, so that we can then go for future funding. But we don't have that right now. So what we're trying to do is create this institute or this database so that we can start to feed into that. So we're not there yet. So the seed funding is funding that we already know the expressed need. We know that there is a huge need there for us to start to collect and generate our own data. So this funding is flexible enough that allows us to then, and again, it's just only a one-page application process. So that's why it's just very simple. It's very qualitative in terms of its narrative. So if there's no other questions or thoughts, clarifying questions, then again, come up with 10 action items that we can do to start to prepare us to then be ready to apply for this funding. Okay, so I just want to make sure, does everyone have their 10 yet, or do you still need a little more time? No, actually, we're going to be working in small groups, so everyone needs to have their own list. Who needs more time? 1, 2, okay. So now that wherever you're at, I would like you to pair up with someone either next to you or someone you don't know. I want you to pair up and compare your lists. So go over your list, have a discussion, share your list with one another, and then together come up with between the two lists, so there will be 10 action items between the two of you or somewhere around there. Come up with a consolidated prioritize top 10 action items based upon what the two of you had come up with. So if one of you came up with and if both of you came up with the same idea, go ahead and just reduce that into one. And if you want to prioritize that as one of your top 10, that's fine as well. So what you are going to end up with is a listing of 10 action items that the two of you have come up with based upon your own list. Yeah, those are coming up next, so just these ones. Yeah. So, we're gonna need 10. It doesn't matter. Yeah. That's right. You can use whatever color. It doesn't matter. So each of them will get 10. But don't have to use the exact slate that makes up. I don't know how well this is. Yeah, because we're going to do everything on both sides. Huh? I'm good right now. Yeah, I'm just trying to setting it up. Then they get upset about that.
So do you want pink on these ones or not really? Okay.
It doesn't matter. I mean, it's probably not the like the dark. Yeah. And then if you need more colors, it's more.
Okay. You don't look at those yet?
Yeah, I'm trying to cover too many things. Let's put up here.
I use bigger statements to have bigger things.
Does everyone have their combined list of 10? Not yet? Okay. And viewers at home, if you're still on here and you want to participate in this activity, feel free to type in your comments on the video feed, and our colleague here, Jolene Holgate, will be monitoring that and then be adding your particular action items that you may come up with to our discussion here. So again, if you want to participate, we're asking the question, what action steps do we need to come up with to be prepared to apply for the ANA, the Administration for Native American Funding, by October of this year, October 2019, so in 2 months' time. So what are some key action steps that we need to do to be able to begin to apply for the seed funding that would then help us collectively move forward to create this MMDR Data Institute? How are you all doing in terms of getting your 10? Are you almost there? You guys okay with your 10 yet? You got your 10? Oh, your collected combined list? Okay. You guys got your combined list? You got your 10? Yeah. Combine between the two of you to combine your list of 10. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on and prep you for the next step. So once you get your list of 10, we are going to distribute sheets of paper, and what we need you to do is write one idea per sheet of paper. I want you to write big, and given your action item, if it's very lengthy, we want you to consolidate it down to 3 to 7 words per sheet for that idea. So it's, again, one idea per sheet, 3 to 7 words for that particular idea, and we would like you to write big so that way everyone can see it, because what's going to happen is those sheets are going to end up on the wall. So we want everyone to be able to see it and write legibly so that way we can see it. So if my co-facilitators can distribute the sheets of paper, and we're going to be providing markers as well so that you can write on your sheets. So again, 10. Yeah, so like your number 1. Yeah, you want to write 1. So like this first one, you write it on 1 sheet. But we want you to write big, and if it's more than 7 words, try to consolidate it down so it's like no more than 7 words. Yeah, so your first one. So this idea will be on one card on each sheet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's like 8 words. Try to get no more than 7, but sometimes it'll fit still. So we want to be able to have it legible on one card. So that way we're not. Yeah. So it's like one card, one card, one card, one card. So ultimately we're gonna be. That's why I was.
So we just narrow it down.
Yeah.
Well, that was our time for the rest of them.
So yeah, so ultimately what we were asking for is 10 ideas per group or per pairing. So, but if you didn't get 10, that's fine too. That's fine. How old is your? How would you consolidate this down? So for our viewers online, if you're contributing your action item, just to help the process here of what we're trying to do, again, Your idea, if you could get it no more than 7 or 8 words, because that'll be helpful for us, because that way it's easier for us to facilitate this process. So again, if you're typing in contributing your ideas online, try to get no more than 7 or 8 words, okay? Thank you. Good. I'll need my little buddy rabbit. How are we doing? Okay. As you're writing your one-sheet cards, I want you to separate your top three. Separate your top three action items. I know some of you may still be writing your 10 cards, but separate your top three for now, and then continue writing your next level. Okay, so if you have your top three, put your top three cards in your hand and put them over your head so Zoe can collect them. Zoe, did we get everyone? Did we get everyone? Okay. Okay, so, God, that echo is real loud. So we have some sheets up here from our viewers online, so thank you for that. So what we have here, what you all came up as your prioritized cards would be describe Envision MMDR Institute, gather research and documents, seek partnerships and collaborate, finalize funding statement, professional grant writer, identify and secure stakeholders, create timeline of tasks, gather testimonies of victims' families and survivors, draft plan of operation, identify a coordinator, articulate problem statement, both quantitative and qualitative, review the application, environmental scan of existing programs, for example, social services, women's shelter, etc. Make a statement of impact versus statement of need, develop strategic plan with timeline, list all current resources and gaps in care, list volunteer network for lobbying purposes, establish I-40 as hub of criminal activity, secure tribal resolutions of support agencies and NNC, Navajo Nation Council, series of face-to-face meetings with Navajo, non-Navajo, and community grassroots organizations, determine entity to be main recipient of funding, chapter agency letters of support, develop a community education campaign based upon needs and issues, clearly define problem areas, specifically provide statement. Clearly define problem areas, specifically provide statement. Okay, so it's like two thoughts in one. So, you all did some great work there. Now, are you seeing some cards that kind of flow together or may relate to one another? Can you see them kind of pairing? Do you see pairs or clusters starting to form? So, call out, what are some that could be put together? What are like a general theme? What are some, yes? So, well, this one says series of face-to-face meetings, but this one says chapter agency support, letters of support, Where's, where was that one at? Oh, right here, secure tribal resolutions to support. Oh, seek partnerships and collaborate. Do you feel that this is with this group? Or do you think it's something separate? Okay. Okay, so you're saying that identify and secure, okay, I can do this. Identify and secure key stakeholders. You feel that that goes here as well? Okay. Okay. What else do you see? Series of face-to-face meetings with Navajo Nation and community partners here? Okay. Or separate? Did I hear someone say? Wow. Okay. So some people are saying it's separate. Because it's this cluster right now is saying seek partnerships and collaborate, identify and secure key stakeholders. This one says series of face-to-face meetings with Navajo, non-Navajo, and community grassroots organizations. Or it still could be part of this cluster. Okay, we're not going to prioritize the order. We're just going to put them together. Which one did you just add? This one? Okay, so another person online said, market with public organizations for media and stakeholder exposure. So again, marketing exposure. So we have up here again, finalize funding statement, describe envision MMDR Institute, gather research and documents, professional grant writer, draft plan of operation, identify a coordinator, articulate problem statement, both quantitative and qualitative, review the application, develop strategic plan with timeline, make a statement of impact versus statement of need, establish I-40 as a hub for criminal activity, marketing, determine entity to be main recipient of funding, review the application, list all current resources and gaps in care, environmental scan of existing programs, create timeline of tasks, gather testimonies of victims and families, list volunteer network for lobbying purposes, clearly define problem areas, specifically provide statement, and develop a community education campaign based upon needs and issues. Okay, what do you?
This one, and this one seem to be the same.
Okay.
Or similar.
So what he pointed out is make a statement of impact versus statement of need, clearly define problem areas, specifically provide statement, articulate problem statement, both quantitative and qualitative. Do you feel that those all resonate well with one another, or in a general sense of relate well to one? Yes, no? Yes? Okay. So this is another grouping. So see what we're doing here? We're starting to look at general themes that are coming up from all of your activity, your action steps, that we're trying to create these clusters, these themes. What else do you see as working together? So this is develop a strategic plan with timelines, draft a plan of operation. Are they similar? We have environmental scan of existing programs, list current resources, list volunteers and network. Review application, professional grant writer, gather research and documents, describe the Envision Data Institute. What else are you seeing as potentially relating to one another? Okay. People see a theme here? Environmental scan, listing of current resources and volunteer organizations. Okay. What else could possibly be grouped together?
Well, the gathered testimonies of victim families and survivors
Mhm.
goes with the qualitative problem statement.
How do people feel about that? The testimonies, the actual testimonies from victims' families, part of the qualitative data here? Okay. Right, develop a community education campaign based upon needs and issues. So education campaign, do you see that going there? Or could it be its cluster with marketing? The marketing with public organizations for media stakeholder exposure. You feel that these two go together? Okay. So we have describe and vision MMDR Institute, finalize funding statement, draft plan of operation, identify a coordinator, I guess it's identify a professional grant writer, review the application, establishing I-40 as its own corridor or its own hub of criminal activity, gather research and documents, create timeline of tasks, develop strategic plan with timeline, determine entity to be the main funding recipient. What else do you feel is together?
I say the yellow one is like 1, 2, 3, and analyze funding statement all right.
So you're saying review application, the professional grant writer, the research documents, and what was the other one? Oh, funding statement. You feel that those 4 form its own cluster? Here? Do people feel it goes better there? So people feel this goes here as part of the quantitative and qualitative data to go into our research? You feel that this goes with this cluster, or do you feel it goes with, as was proposed earlier, with this cluster? Because this one, like you had talked about, talked specifically about the problem statement or the statement of need. So these all relate to just that one particular area. These ones are part of the actual grant writing process where you have those like 1, 2, 3 steps that you want to go through. So how do you feel that, how do you want to cluster those, or where do you think they belong together? Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. So for the purposes of what we have currently on here, do you feel it's a standalone right now until we can see more? Okay, so we'll leave that there until we see other prioritized action steps, because we may find a grouping that it belongs to better. So what about these others? Timeline and timeline? Okay. Describe, envision MMDR Institute, draft plan of operation, identify a coordinator, review the application, hire a professional grant writer, finalize funding statement, determine entity to be main recipient of funding, and establish I-40 as a hub of criminal activity. What about one of the statements? So part of the environmental scan, this cluster, because it's, could it be part of this cluster or part of the statement of need? Because again, well, we'll see. We'll see. We can always move them around. So for now, we'll leave it there. Draft plan of operation. So you're saying, could it be part of timeline with task and strategic plan? You see that going there? Okay. Identify coordinator, determine entity to be main recipient of funding, review application, hire grant writer, finalize funding statement, and describe this institute. Describe Envision MMDR Institute. So it's like that narrative piece of the grant, describing what it is we're hoping to create. Is it part of strategic plan? For those of you in the room, is that part of the strategic plan? So like the statement of need, this is kind of a standalone for itself. It's a different statement, that's a different component that makes up a grant, right? So do you feel it's its own area, or do you feel it's lumped in with another piece? With the funding statement, because there's a funding statement and Envision MMDR. And I'm almost thinking these four could be a cluster looking at logistics. At the who, yeah, of like what we need to do, right? Do you all feel that these four could be its own cluster? Identifying a coordinator, determining the entity to be the funding recipient, reviewing the application, and hiring a professional grant writer. Kind of like the logistics, like what do we need to do in order to get to this piece? Okay, seeing a lot of nods, we'll move forward. I don't want to get bogged down too much. Okay, begin to look at your next top three. Look at your next prioritized top three. Online folks, if you have other ideas for action items to answer our focus question of what key steps, action items do we need to do in order to apply for funding by October 2019, so within the next 2 months. So if you have ideas, write that down, no more than 8 words, please, and then type that into the live feed comment box, and our fantastic Jolene Holgate will be monitoring that and writing that down for you, and we will be including them on the board as well. October 2019. Do we have all the cards up? Okay, so network with collaborators, develop plan of how to help affected victims and survivors, families, Navajo Nation support, vision and mission statement, get community support, again, that statement of describing the Envision Institute, identifying process of grant writing, determine requested amount, finalize funding statement, gain community support and identifying grant opportunities, develop budget, include plan on how the funds will be distributed, define MMDR Data Institute objectives by need, establish tangible goals and objectives 1 year versus 5 years and/or 5 years, compile information on and access and assess gaps, identify your PI, continued problem if not funded, define data use plan and who will have access, finalize the Navajo Nation Human Trafficking White Paper, start the process early, articulate MMDR Data Institute working staff and leadership, identify entities for MOUs for data sharing. So I see we have a lot of good grant writers in the room. You know the process, so that's awesome. So do you see any unique new clusters forming, or do any of these sheets, can they go to any of these other groupings that we have established already? To where? Oh, you're saying, and what was the other one you said? Oh. So, you're saying this could be one cluster, one grouping? Identifying process of grant writing, identify your PI, establish tangible goals and objectives. Could these be a group by itself, or could these fit into any of these other clusters here? Because we have identifying your coordinator, determining main recipient, professional grant writer, and reviewing of grant application, creating timeline of tasks, strategic plan, and develop plan of operation. So I'm wondering if 2 of those could come to this side and the goals and objectives be with strategic planning? Is people in agreement with that? So we have in this cluster, identify coordinator, determine main recipient, funding recipient, hire a professional grant writer, review the application, identify the PI, and identifying process of grant writing. Here we have create timeline of tasks, develop strategic plan with timeline, develop our draft plan of operation, and establish tangible goals and objectives. Do those fit all together? Okay. What about, let's see, what could go somewhere? Okay. Here? Okay. So do you feel these 2 are its own grouping, or could they together be part of another grouping there? Okay. Let's kind of see what that will look like up here. So folks, we can again address that if we're not happy with it there. Let's,
Determine amount request, finalize funding statement, develop budget that includes plan. That's all kind of money stuff.
right? Correct? And then this one, could it go with goals and objectives as well? Because it says define MMDR Data Institute objectives by need. Okay. Okay, so network with collaborators, develop plan of how to help affected victims, survivors, and families, get community support, identify entities for MOUs for data sharing, gain community support and identify grant opportunities, compile information and assess gaps, articulate MMDR Data Institute working staff and leadership. There's going to be a continued problem if not funded. Define data use plan and who will have access. Finalize the Navajo Nation trafficking white paper and start the process early. Bless you. Here. Folks feel like that's a good place for it?
Would it go under the last column, all the support stuff?
Here. So get community support and gain community support, identify grant opportunities. Could that go, the question is, could it go with chapter agency letters of support, secure tribal resolutions of support, and Navajo Nation support? You feel it could go there, or is this too community-based and this is too legislative-based? Or do we want just support together, all, just no matter who it's at what level? Okay, so question was, could it be part of the marketing with public organizations and media and stakeholder exposure? Develop a community education campaign based upon needs. So do you feel these two belong here? Or the other question was, do they belong here? So where do you think they would feel? I see hands going this way, hands going that way. Where do we feel it's more generalized, or where does it fit better? With media and public education awareness campaigns, or tribal leadership and Navajo Nation support? Because again, this is just communities, gaining some community support. Mm-hmm. So how do people feel with that? Seeing some nods of yes, have it here. Not quite sure yet. Okay, so majority says here, let's leave it here for now. We can always move things around. Network with collaborators, identify entities for MOUs, for data sharing, develop plan of how to help affected victims and survivors and families, articulate the staff and leadership for this institute, define data use plan and who will have access, finalize the Navajo Nation human trafficking white paper, start the process early, and that this can still be a problem if not funded. Network with collaborators, do you feel seek partnerships and identify these people? Okay.
Identify entities and find data users.
So these two, MOUs and data sharing agreements together? Okay. And I think that they would be their own group. Sorry. Start the process early, articulate data working staff and leadership, finalize the human trafficking white paper, develop plan of how to help affected families and survivors, and it'll be a continued problem without funding. This seems like logistics and process. You think it'd go here with this grouping? Identifying the PI, identifying grant writer, all of that, and part of that started the process early. In the same cluster here. Develop a plan of how to help affected victims, survivors, and families.
You could put
Problem statement? Yeah, because it's currently a problem, and if we don't get funding, it's still going to be a continued problem. What about a plan to help affected families? It's with, I think the closest we have is to describe Envision MMDR Institute mission and vision statement. Then we also have timeline and plan of operation. So here, everyone okay with that? Okay. What about this last one? Finalize the human trafficking white paper. Do you think it's kind of its own thing? It's not really related to the grant writing? Or do you think this would be part of the collecting the documents and resources? Where's that at? Where did we see that? Right here, compile and assess gaps, or no? That's not right. Oh, this one here. Do we have any remaining sheets or cards that people haven't sent up yet? My helpers are gone. They revolted. They said, we're quitting. Okay, thank you. Who will be primary people in charge of funding? Clearly define stakeholders, obtain supporting resolutions from community to council levels, develop objectives, state outcomes, timeline for revision, identify MMDR Institute location or house, identify specific funding needs, set deadlines, create system of accountability, create basic research design, type of data system hardware, type of data collection, establish a team, identifying components, prevention education, support services, hot links, PR, aftercare, etc. So, with these new items, do you see any new clusters forming, or do you see any that will fit perfectly with an existing cluster? Oh, did you guys see any groupings of where people could go, or where some of these cards could go? Develop objectives, state your outcomes. Could it be with the develop objectives, goals and objectives in that cluster? Now, where did I Does that go there?
There's one determined entity receives funding, there's identify specific funding needs over here, and there's also who will be primarily in charge of funding? It all go over.
Finalize funding statement, determine amount and budget. Is that what we're thinking? Finalize funding statement, determine amount requested, develop budget, including plan of how funds will be distributed, who will be primary people in charge of funding, identify specific funding needs. Do these all go together? I'm wondering then if determine entity to be main recipient should go here, because we have that also. Does that make more sense to go here? Okay.
And then identify MMDR data institute, probably the same.
Over here? So where we're going to house the data, the location, is it necessarily going to be the same as who's going to receive the funding, or is it going to be something different? Could that go here, or could it go here as part of the logistics and processing? Or could it go with strategic planning? It says identify MMDR Data Institute location or house. So is it going to be, say, with Navajo Nation EPI department? Or is it going to be with Diné College or NTU? So is it logistics, or does it go with the funding where we're talking about who will be primarily in charge of funding and who will be the recipient of the funding? Because this is just where the money's going, but this is saying where the actual institute is going to be located. So does it go here with logistics? Okay. Set deadlines and time for revision. So logistics. All with this big column here. This growing column. Create system of accountability. Create basic research design, type of data system, hardware, define stakeholders, obtain supporting resolutions from community to council levels, type of data collection, establish a team, identifying components, prevention education, support services, hotlines, PR, and aftercare. Here? Oh, right here. This one? Oh, right here. Supporting resolutions, here. System of accountability, research design, type of hardware, type of data collection, establishing a team and identifying components. Where could these go? The long list, review application, grant writing process. So all of these will be part of that logistic piece. Is that what you're saying? Create research design, type of data system, hardware, and type of data collected? Would establish a team also be part of that as well? A team and create system of accountability. You think all of these are part of the logistics, or I'm wrapping it around because y'all, it's like one long list. You think they go there, or should they go someplace else? Create system of accountability and establish a team with this whole logistics piece. You think they go there, or could they go someplace else? I only ask because establish a team sounds like it could go with articulate MMDR Data Institute working staff and leadership. So could it go there with that same process? And it's created a system of accountability. Would that go there? Or does it go here with describe the Envision Data Institute, develop a plan how it'll help affected victims, survivors, and vision and mission statement? It's a system of accountability. So checks and balances.
Is the accountability for the data institute? Like, how are they going to hold themselves? Like, what are their guiding principles going to be? How are they going to be transparent?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to?
So would it go here, or does it go someplace else? Define Data Institute objectives by need, plan of operation. Could that be part of there? Yeah, so it could either be here or here. So what do you think it goes best with? Here? Everyone okay with that? And finally, identifying components, prevention education, support services, hotlines, PR, and aftercare. here. So this grouping is describe, envision MMDR Institute, vision and mission statement, develop plan of how to help affected victims, survivors, and families, and then identifying components, prevention, education, support services, hotlines, PR, aftercare, etc. Do you feel that that goes there? Yes, no, nod, yes, shake head, no. I don't know, let's just move on. What do you guys feel? Okay? All right, so let's review each grouping. Chapter and agency letters of support, secure tribal resolutions of support, agencies and Navajo Nation Council, Navajo Nation support, obtain supporting resolutions from community to council levels. So that's one grouping. The next grouping is seek partnerships and collaborate, identify and secure key stakeholders, series of face-to-face meetings with Navajo Nation, non-Navajo and community grassroots organizations, network with collaborators, and clearly define stakeholders. Everyone feel okay with that grouping? Next one, articulate the problem statement, both quantitative and qualitative. Clearly define problem areas, specifically provide a statement, make a statement of impact versus statement of need, gather testimonies of victims, families, and survivors. If not funded, then it's going to be a continued problem. Finalize the Navajo Nation Human Trafficking White Paper. Sound okay? Next one, environmental scan and existing programs, social services, shelters, etc. List all current resources, gaps in care, list volunteer network for lobbying purposes, establish I-40 as a hub for criminal activity, compile information and assess gaps. Kind of all together. Market with public organizations for media and stakeholder exposure. Develop a community education campaign based upon needs and issues. Get community support, gain community support, and identify grant opportunities. You feel all together? That is really. Gather research and documents. The environmental scan? Oh, the qualitative and quantitative, it's all the statements. So do the research so that you can then create the statements, the problem statement. Feel better? Okay. Create timeline of tasks, develop strategic plan with timeline, draft plan of operation, establish tangible goals and objectives, define MMDR Data Institute by objectives, or define MMDR Data Institute objectives by need, state your outcomes, develop your objectives, create system of accountability. All together? Then the long one. Identify a coordinator, identify MMDR Data Institute location or house, hire a professional grant writer, review the application, identify your PI, identify process for grant writing, start the process early, articulate MMDR Data Institute working staff and leadership, timeline for revisions, state your deadlines, create basic research design, type of data system, i.e. hardware, type of data collection, and establish a team.
It feels like those are actually two things. Like one is identify people, and then tasks associated with grant writing. And so it kind of seems like we could actually have two different columns with one identifying different types of people and another one of tasks and
Yeah,
grant writing.
because this one actually goes with some of these two. This one, no.
So how do folks feel on that? Now that you've kind of seen it being read out loud, are you seeing areas where they could be moved to? Or do you still feel that that's okay with that long list there? Because I'm hearing that some of these could actually be moved to other categories. Think about that while we do the last three columns. Describe and envision MMDR Institute, the vision and mission statement, develop a plan of how to help affected victims and survivors, identify components, prevention education, support services, aftercare, Finalize funding statement, determine amount requested, develop budget, include plan on how funds will be distributed, who will be primary people in charge of funding, identify specific funding needs, determine entity to be main funding recipient, identify entities for MOUs for data sharing, define data use plan, and who will have access. So, kind of to your point, that I do see some of these items that could go elsewhere. And I'm just wondering if other people are seeing that as well. And if so, what are those items and where could they be moved to? Because I'll propose one change. Identify entities for MOUs for data sharing, define data use plan and who will have access, create your basic research design, the type of hardware data system, and the type of data collected. Could these three be then moved here? Okay. Yay, it's not so long now. What else do you see that could potentially be moved from that column? So we have identify coordinator, identify MMDR Data Institute location or house, professional grant writer, review the application, identify your PI, identify process for grant writing, start the process early, articulate MMDR Institute working staff and leadership, time for revision, set your deadlines, establish a team. The timeline, the strategic planning, and all of these components. Let's see. So let me see, because I'm kind of seeing, let me just see this just so that I can have my brain working. How does that breakout look? Identify process of grant writing, start the process early, identify time for revision, state your deadlines, review the application, hire a professional grant writer. All one cluster. Identify the coordinator, identify the location, the Data Institute location or house, identify PI, articulate the Data Institute, working leadership and staff, establish a team. Does that make more sense now with that? Okay. So, think of a title for each of these clusters. No more than 5 words, thinking about what is that depicting, what is this relating to, what is the general theme you're seeing here. Like this one, finalize funding statement, determine requested amount, develop budget, who will be the primary people in charge of funding, identifying specific funding needs, determine entity to be funding recipient. What could we call this whole group? What else in line with funding? Just funding in general, or just do we want to call it, give it a really nice fancy name? Are your brains fried right now? Just funding, you feel okay with just tagging it funding? Financial logistics? Statement of need or the financial statement. So funding logistics, is everyone okay with that? Funding acquisition, or is acquisition part of logistics? Just asking just to clarify. So funding logistics? Okay. What other names can we come up with for groups? Infrastructure, or?
Yeah, a lot of times in a grant, you just have a figure that's the organization.
Mhm. So what do you propose as a title for that group? I just said infrastructure as a kind of like a word there. Yeah, because I was just like, throwing it out. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Right. Okay. I see where you're going with that. So organizational chart, how do you all feel with that title? So organizational structure? Okay. What else could we title? Bless you. What type of statement? Problem statement for this section? You like that? Problem statement for this column? Or statement of need? Which do you like better? Which sounds better? Problem statement or statement of need? Do we want to say this is a problem, or do we want to say this is our need? Statement of need? Statement of need? What is that? Demonstration of need? All this other stuff. Demonstration of need? Need statement? I mean, there's other ways we can wordsmith it, but demonstration of need, how does that feel with folks? Demonstration of need? What about the one with Navajo Nation Council resolutions, getting supporting resolutions from chapters? What about that first column there? Navajo leader support? It's this one, the first one here. Chapter agency letters of support, secure tribal resolutions of support, Navajo Nation support, obtaining supporting resolutions from community all the way up to council. Legislative support, or in legislative support, because it's really focusing on council and chapters, which is the legislative branch of the Navajo Nation. Legislative support? Do we want to say Navajo in support? Okay. So then just move it, just keep it legislative support. How do people feel? Legislative support? Because then we could also do the MOUs with those other entities as outside. Because I know that all those cards specify chapter, Navajo Nation Council, Navajo Nation support. Okay. Just clarification, making sure we're getting consensus. What about this second column? Seek partnerships and collaborate, identify key stakeholders, series of face-to-face meetings, network with collaborators, and clarify stakeholders. Stakeholders and collaborators. Collaborative relationships. What do you all feel with that section? After we name all of these, then we can take a break. Because I can feel the energy kind of, it's a lot of brain work, I know. So we will take a break after we've named all of these clusters. Where's Jolene? Okay. So what do you think for that cluster? Seek partnerships and collaborators, or seek partnerships and collaborate, identify and secure key stakeholders, series of face-to-face meetings, network with collaborators, and clearly define stakeholders. Collaboration, you want to just leave it there? Partnerships and stakeholders? Okay, one at a time. So we're talking about stakeholders and partnerships, and you're saying communication and collaboration. What do you all feel on those two options? Stakeholders and collaborators, or stakeholders and partnerships. Building relationships, fostering relationships. Developing and strengthening relationships. What do you all feel about that? Right, because the development goes to the new relationships. Strengthening is really going back to the existing relationships. So developing and strengthening relationships. And then you were saying? Seeking partnerships. So how do we want to word that in a title for this column? Yeah. Right, so how do we want to word that? Do we just want to list it as you've stated, partnerships, and then in parentheses, developing, strengthening, and, or do you want to just do partnerships? Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Do we want the main title to be partnerships and then have subheading, or do we want to go with the proposed one, which is instead of putting that underneath as the subheading, but just having the main title be developing and strengthening partnerships? Because it just sounds like it's the same wording, but just wordsmithing it to rearranging how that flows is what I'm hearing right now. Because one person said developing and strengthening partnership, and the other person said partnerships, developing and strengthening. So how do we want to word that? Because the key words are all there, it's just how do we arrange the order of that, is what I'm asking. I throw that to the group. Just put partnerships. I left out the last S because I ran out of space. What about this one? Environmental scan, listing of all resources, gaps in care, list of volunteer network, establishing I-40 as a hub of criminal identity, activity, and compile information and assess gaps. Do we just want to say environmental scan? Gaps analysis. You like gap analysis? What do other people think? So what could we potentially title this then? Inventory and assessments, I like that. Environmental analysis. I like the key with that word in inventory because it goes back to, ties into some of what we're saying here. And inventory and assessment. Community inventory. Identify community inventory or develop community inventory. What do we feel? How do we want to massage that wording? Assessment instead of inventory. So again, how do folks feel? Well, I mean, let's throw out some ideas. Let's generate this, keep the momentum going, because I feel we're really laxing here. We're really, because I can do an activity with you all to get your blood flowing if you want to do that, but we can, again, my incentive to you all to finish this is the break. So I'm trying to say, how do we begin to look at titles for these? Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more clusters. 6 more titles to come up with. If that's a point of contention or a place of a roadblock there, let's move on to another one. Does anyone have a needs assessment? Mm-hmm. So that's why I like that word inventory. Do we want to do community inventory, resource inventory? Or do we just want to say inventory without even labeling what type of inventory? So going back to what you had stated earlier, inventory and assessment. Okay. What was that? Does that feel better? Inventory of resources and gaps? Is it really 4? Okay. Inventory of resources and gaps. Yes? No? Okay. Okay, what about the next column? Market with public organizations for media stakeholder exposure, develop an education campaign based upon needs and issues, get community support, gain community support, and identify grant opportunities. Establishing community buy-in, community awareness, community buy-in, community awareness. Right. I'm getting invested in this. Community investment, community buy-in, community mobilization. I kind of like the mobilization because it's action-oriented. Okay, community mobilization. Next one, identifying the process for grant writing. Start the process early. Time for revision. Set your deadlines. Review the grant application. Professional grant writer. Grant writing. Grant development. Grant writing. Next one, create timeline of tasks, develop strategic plan with timeline, develop plan of operation, establish tangible goals and objectives, define MMDR Data Institute objectives by need, state outcomes, define your objectives, create system of accountability. Strategic planning. Describe and vision MMDR Institute, vision and mission statement, develop a plan of how to help affected victims, families, and survivors, identify components, prevention, education, supportive services, hotlines, PR, aftercare. Plan of operation. And this final one, this column next to me. Identify entities for MOUs for data sharing, define data use plan and who will have access, create basic research design, type of data system, type of data collection. Business model, what else? Data framework. Institute framework, data framework, framework. What do you all feel? What seems best? Data framework? Everyone okay with that? Okay. Hearing no objections? So, look at all of your hard work this afternoon. So again, to go back to our question, what steps, action items do we need to accomplish to apply for the A&A funds to begin creating an MMDR Data Institute by October of 2019? And those steps are developing a data framework, identifying funding logistics, creating a plan of operation, developing an organizational structure, creating a strategic plan, undergoing the grant writing process, mobilize the community, develop an inventory of resources and gaps, demonstrate the need, develop partnerships, and gain Navajo Nation legislative support. Sound good? Awesome. So you guys, let's take a 15-minute break. Let's get outside, get some cool air, mentally decompress, and then we will go on to our final stage of this activity.
these things up over the next 8 weeks. And then we're going to come back together as a core group, and we are going to do the implementation sheets for them, or some other, I guess, more detailed form of documentation, because we're kind of late in the day now, and our energy is kind of low, and everybody has to go home. Some people have to drive a couple hours, so we're going to go ahead and, I guess, prioritize which needs to happen first. So we basically have about 8 weeks between now and October 11. So we just pick our October 11 arbitrarily. It was just a day out there, and it's 8 weeks. So we just picked that day because we thought it was cool. So yes, she actually laughed on 10/11. My little girl right there with the yellow shirt, that was when she laughed. She laughed on 10/11, so that was a good day. All right, so we have data framework, legislative support, funding logistics, plan of operation, partnership, organization structure, strategic planning, demonstration of need, grant writing, inventory of resources and gaps, community mobilization. Which one or two must be done first, in your opinion? Plan of operation? Okay. Strategic planning? Okay. Okay, inventory of resources and gaps. Okay. So these three? Okay, so this right here should have already been, okay. And then what do you think needs to come next? So we're starting out with Navajo Nation legislative support, plan of operation, strategic planning, inventory of resources and gaps. So what needs to happen next? Demonstration of needs. Okay. What else? We have funding, logistics, data framework, organizational structure, partnership, grant writing, and community mobilization. Right here? Or right here? Okay, right here? Okay, so now we have left organizational structure, funding, logistics, data framework, partnerships, and community mobilization. Funding logistics to 5 or 6. Okay, and you had a comment? What do you guys think? Strategic planning with your partnerships or before your partnerships? Before, so leave it there. And then partnerships will come in either here or here. Okay, right here? Okay. Okay, weeks 1 and 2 have a lot of work. Okay, so what we have left is community mobilization, organization structure, and data framework. Organizational structure 1 and 2. Okay. What else? Where did the other 2 go? Data framework and community mobilization. We have 2 left. Data framework and community mobilization. Five and 6. Okay. Okay, so the last one is community mobilization. Where does this go? 7 and 8? Okay. Excellent. All right, so we have Navajo Nation legislative support, which should have been, so would you say started last month or something? Months ago? Plan of operation, strategic planning, inventory of resources and gaps, organization structure in weeks 1 and 2. Weeks 3 and 4, demonstration of need, grant writing, partnerships, Weeks 5 and 6, funding logistics, data framework, and then weeks 7 and 8, community mobilization. Yes. Okay, so
Partnerships are like, this is what we're doing.
okay.
Like, I want you as a partner, come to it, come help us plan this out.
Okay, so we're switching strategic planning and partnerships. So now we have, to kick it off, Navajo Nation legislative support. In weeks 1 and 2, we have the plan of operation, partnership, inventory of resources and gaps, and then organizational structure. And then weeks 3 and 4, demonstration of need, grant writing, strategic planning. Weeks 5 and 6, funding logistics, data framework. Weeks 7 and 8, community mobilization. Yes.
Because weeks 1 and 2 is so, if you put too much in 2 weeks,
Yes.
it's gonna get all. I would suggest move organizational structure to weeks 5 and 6.
Okay, organizational structure to weeks 5 and 6. Okay. How does that look? Okay, we'll put this one here, we'll put it on top. Okay, how does that look? Bueno? Njun? Awesome! Good job, guys. Good job. Give yourselves a hand. Yay! Excellent. You guys did fabulous work. Thank you very much for staying the duration. I really appreciate your energy, your commitment, your dedication, and all of your ideas. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Did you want to say anything, Jolene?
I do want to thank everyone for attending the second forum. We definitely are going to keep continuing this conversation as we begin to develop this. I do want to give special recognition to our facilitators, Kurt Begay from the Southwest Indigenous Women's Coalition, as well as Dr. Zoe McKenzie from the Navajo Area IHS. And we have learned a lot today. We were able to digest a lot of information, and through the help of you all, we were able to start the development of this action plan. So I'm very proud of you, and we do want to keep this as a community-based project, and we will involve the stakeholders once we do get to that point. So, and just to reiterate, this action plan is also going to be incorporated into our community action kit, where we do want to start empowering our communities to understand the missing persons reporting process, as well as teaching them how to mobilize their own missing persons units and things like that. From what I understand, I know Navajo PD does have a missing persons unit, but of course they're under-resourced, understaffed, so that's where I think, you know, a lot of the community aspect of this is where we can make up for that area. So thank you, everyone. I also want to thank our sponsors, the Navajo Nation Sexual Violence Prevention Working Group, Office of the President and Vice President, Office of the Speaker, the Tuba City Regional Health Care Center, as well as the wonderful NAU Center for Health Equity Research, who hosted us. So we want to thank you guys for providing this space and allowing us to continue this conversation here. And I also want to give a shout out to our Navajo TV and film crew. This would not have been possible or broadcasted if it weren't for them, and they stayed the complete 16 hours, so I do want to extend our thanks to them for their support as well as their participation. So this will close out our second forum, and we will send out information on when we will hold our next forum. We will have sort of like a mini forum, but this will be focused on law enforcement and federal law enforcement relation as far as relating to the Navajo Nation. And we may be holding this in Tuba City. I want to say sometime in November. We don't have a date solidified, but we'll keep you all updated. And then we're hoping to have our next forum just like this, possibly in Utah or in the Eastern Agency. So we want to make sure that we are reaching out to the different areas and understanding where those gaps are and what resources they need and that sort of thing as we continue to map this out. So thank you, everyone. Have a safe drive. And thank you to all our online individuals who participated.